Hi, I'm Brandy,
And I'm Jen.
and this is
Keeping It Simple.
Hi, welcome to Keeping It Simple. In today's episode, episode 7, we're going to be discussing the symbolism of the sunflower. All right, Jen, so you're really the reason that we picked this symbol because I'm going to let you tell the people why was it so important for us to talk about the sunflower in this episode?
Well, I think you're talking about the fact that it was popping up every freaking where for me
Yes.
and like in rapid fire. And that's usually what we try to do now is we try to like pay attention to what symbols are organically coming up for us as far as kind of navigating what we might present next, because it's surely coming up for other people as well, especially this time of year.
So when you say that you've had sunflowers popping up, like, are you talking about physical sunflowers or are you talking about like, what do you mean popping up? How are they popping up?
I am talking about every way possible. So definitely physical sunflowers. I was telling you not too long ago that I literally had some just grow up out of nowhere in my backyard, which I love. They're like weeds, but the most beautiful weeds ever. They weren't intentionally planted, but here they are. They're all over my neighborhood right now, and I know it's the time of year, but I swear I've lived in this neighborhood for 20 years, and I swear it's never been this sunflower heavy. I mean, they are just wildly growing. But when I say everywhere, I'm talking like in the span of a week, like I went to the grocery store and there's a lady dressed head to toe in sunflower pattern, like leggings and a shirt. And then I was watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer last night because that's
Whoop,
what I'm
whoop.
right now. I'm on a tear watching all the old episodes. And there's literally a painting on the wall of a sunflower in somebody's house. That's some random house
Wow.
that they're going to visit. That's not one of the main characters' house. So that's what I mean when I'm saying it's showing up everywhere, not just the physical flowers, which have been showing up, but literally just wild little weird places and
So,
clothing
and
and
I think,
walls
and I think that's
everywhere.
important for people to understand is that it doesn't have to be just the physical flower. It can be the symbol or emblem of the flower popping up in different areas of your life.
Right.
So with you, either in the context of the way you're experiencing the sunflower currently, or just in general, what are you understanding the sunflower to be? Like, what is that message that's coming through for you?
For me, on a personal level, I feel like sunflowers appear for me because this isn't the first time they've popped up when I am in need of a reminder to hold my head high and stand in my effing authority. So I feel like sunflowers are just inherent of symbolically of confidence and your personal power. They're linked to the solar plexus for a reason in the chakra system because they are, the seat of our power, just like that bright yellow energy of our solar plexus. They have that bright radiant energy that. I also think it's just interesting. I'm not a huge flower person. I don't mean that like I don't like flowers because of course they're pretty, but I'm
Yeah.
not somebody that really just loves getting flowers or planting flowers. To me, they're a lot of them are just so stinking delicate. They're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, you're cute, but you're gonna last for a day. But the sunflowers are these resilient, thick stalked mother effers that basically will grow anywhere they damn well please. They're hardy, they're strong, they're tall. I mean, they really are, as far as flowers go, in a whole class of their own, as far as
Yeah.
the way they carry themselves.
Here's what I find interesting is I've always attributed sunflowers to my grandmother who passed in 2007. Now, that didn't happen until later on, though, because I didn't know her favorite color. And I actually asked somebody in the family, and they said, I think it was yellow. And I had to think back, and I'm like, that makes sense, actually. With what I know about her, and she was a painter. That's who taught me how to oil paint.
Oh,
So
I love that.
and I think about the ways and the things that she painted, and I'm like, yellow was so prevalent in so many things that makes sense. And then I started attributing the sunflower to her. Um, Not because of anything while she was alive, but just because of after the fact. Then sunflower isn't a huge thing for me, right? Like it's just not something that's super big. You mentioned sunflowers have been popping up for you, and they have been everywhere for me. They are showing up everywhere. And I know part
Right.
of it is the time of the year, right? Because we're dragging out the fall stuff. And so sunflower just is going to naturally be more in stores and stuff like that. But it's interesting because this started a couple of months ago. Like you said, I think it was like 2 months ago, something like that, is when you said sunflowers started popping up.
Right.
And if you remember the International Divination event, Tide, when we went in May, do you remember that deck that I picked up that everybody was like, where did you find that? And I said it was on the swap table, that anatomical deck.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I was deciding what deck is it? What tarot deck am I going to use for all the art and stuff like that? I'm sure you probably saw that I put out a post and said, I don't know which one to pick. I kid you not. I actually framed it in my grandmother's frame. Um, I went to pull, I just opened it up and I'm like, all right, I actually want to like look at this deck. First card on top.
Oh, that's so lovely too. Oh,
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's the Queen of Wands. Um, but the first thing I thought is I'm putting that, I got that, that's a crystal frame. I got that for my grandmother for like Mother's Day in like 2000 and maybe four, maybe five. And then of course and she had mine and my daughter's photo in it. And when she passed, I got the frame back. It
right.
was given back. And it's one of the very few things of hers that I got. And so I was just I was thinking to myself, how ironic is it, this frame that has been sitting here with no photo in it, her photo above it, which is too large. It's from the 1930s. And the first card I pull out is that. And I was like, okay,
That's
here's this sunflower
beautiful.
thing. Jen has transferred her sunflower thing to me. Like it's happening. And it's very similar in meaning to me. It's kind of one of those like you've got to remember why you're doing what you're doing. You got to maintain that passion and that control and that consistency and persistence to
Right.
move forward with everything, despite sometimes how in knots our stomach can be, because you're talking about the solar plexus, like where it's like I've just got
Right.
too many things to do, I can't unwind. And it's kind of like you need to kind of like broaden, open up a little bit, embrace that sun. So with the sunflower, it's called the heliotrope. Have you heard that?
Yes, it's
Okay.
heliotropic. That's right.
Yes. And it's the heliotrope, so it's related to, can you explain for
Yeah,
people who are listening?
heliotropic in science terms means it basically follows this, like it turns its head as a flower towards the sun. It seeks the light, it seeks the sun. So it's a great analogy for, especially when times are rough or when you're feeling kind of beat down, to try to look for the light and look for the positive almost. It's kind of that beautiful illustration of that.
So, I mean, and it does. They literally, if you've ever seen a sunflower, for any listener or watcher who may not know what we're talking about, the head of the flower will literally turn and follow the sun through the sky. And the other interesting thing about these sunflowers is it's not just that they turn their heads, but if you look at their petals, it literally looks like a ray, a sun, and the rays. It's beautiful.
It
So
is.
it comes off as very solar. Um, and did you have anything else on that, Jen?
Well, interestingly, I found, because it's a little bit of a misnomer that they follow the sun their whole lives. They
Oh,
are in fact heliotropic, but apparently it's a myth that they always follow the movement of the sun. It's usually the buds when they're first closed and first starting getting ready to bloom, and the leaves of the flower that have that sun turning behavior where they turn towards the light and towards the sun. So
I mean,
once
it
they're
makes
in full
sense.
bloom, they don't necessarily
Yeah.
always do that. It's apparently they usually are fixed towards the east once they're fully in
Yeah.
bloom. And I
Which
thought that was
makes,
interesting because once they're mature, they don't necessarily need to. They have their own. I don't know. I go back to that
yeah.
analogy of like they have their own confidence, their own personal power. They don't necessarily need to seek the sun as much once they're mature.
And I mean, it makes sense, not just from a spiritual side of things, metaphysical, but just scientifically, because when you talk about, if you've ever, for anybody who hasn't ever seen a sunflower in person, they're freaking huge and they're heavy. So the heads of those flowers, I can see how it would not be quite as easy for a full bloomed head of a sunflower to turn, number one. It's also interesting that they fixate on the east because that's where
Hmm.
the sun rises, but the east is in esoteric teachings is very significant for many reasons, including the sun. So
Well, I love that.
that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, like the Eastern Star. So the reason I was asking is because, you know, one of the things that I thought was interesting, and I realized that the sunflower was attributed to a lot of solar deities
Yes.
throughout the world, but I didn't realize how many, especially in indigenous people. I mean, you
Yep.
hear about it um in different sects, especially when you have like artwork and stuff like that that it's attributed to, whether it's a First Nation people or not. But I started digging in, and I didn't realize how important it was to the Incans. And then I knew of Mithra. I mean, but I didn't know that the sunflower was like the personal emblem of Mithra. Did you know that?
No, I don't know that. I know about the Incas, but I don't know if I know about Mithra. So
Yeah.
please.
So Mithra is the Persian sun god,
Oh,
which again,
okay.
it's that solar deity, and so the
Right.
sunflower. But I had never, I know of Mithra. Somehow I've managed to miss the sunflower being attributed to Mithra. So,
Interesting.
and then of course you've got Apollo.
Yep,
So you
definitely.
want to hit on Apollo because I know Greek is your forte.
Oh, I do love me some Greek mythology. You know I do, girl. Yes. So in Greek mythology, the sun god Apollo, um, he's there's a nymph named Clytie. I believe that's, do we look that up? That we're trying to get that
Yes, Clyde.
pronunciation. Clytie.
There are other
She's
pronunciations, but we will
yeah,
forego those
there
pronunciations
can
here.
we? Can we do it now? Because they're
It could
naughty
be
sounding. I
it
like
could
it.
be Clitty, but
Clytie.
that's the
Um,
other correct pronunciation apparently.
Yes. Clyde, we'll call her Clyde for now. But she
Clyde.
was very obsessed, very besotted with the sun god Apollo. And she tried to follow him everywhere. He kind of, just as a lot of deities do, lost interest really quickly and moved on to the next big thing. And he fell in love with another nymph named, and this one I definitely am probably not going to get the pronunciation right, Leucotho. Leucotho. Do you know if I'm saying that one right?
I don't, I just have it written as the other one. It's literally what I wrote it as.
Well, Clyde is, after he fell in love with Leucotho, Clyde was very jealous and very upset. So she went and told Leucotho's father about this affair that she was having. And the father, as I guess dads do back in the Greek times, he basically sentenced her to death. Like, why
Yeah.
not? That's my daughter, but she's traipsing around and I don't like it. So death to her. Greek mythology is wild. So basically, Apollo is enraged because his lover is now gone, and thanks to Clyde. So he turns her into a sunflower, and she is now fixed. She cannot move about the earth. She can, is fixed in one place, but still, even in sunflower form, she watches his path across the sky as he pulls the sun with his chariot across the sky every day. And so her face still, as a sunflower, turns and follows him. And so it's kind of a sad tale of devotion, because there's definitely themes of devotion there, but obviously it's kind of, she's devoted to the wrong man. She's devoted to somebody who's not treated her
Not
nicely.
interested. Yeah.
And in my mind, it's a great metaphor for devotion's a great property, but be careful who you direct your devotion to, because
Yeah.
you don't want to waste it on somebody who isn't deserving. But it definitely explains the heliotropic nature of sunflowers in that myth as
Yeah.
well.
Well, and I think it's interesting. So the reason we were kind of sparring with you guys about Pleiade versus Clitty is
Mhm.
it is the actual root word for clitoris. And so the sunflower is also attributed to sex, sexual energy, kundalini, everything that has to deal with. Now, we've talked about the solar chakra or the solar center, but it also deals with the sacral and the root, and really how Jen was saying, like she was rooted in the earth. She couldn't move around, that creative energy. And then when you think about a sunflower, it's not just the rays that are present in the petals, but think about all those seeds and what seeds represent for fertility. And so sex, fertility, that all the things that come
All the
with
good
that. Well,
sexy stuff.
yeah, I don't want to go too if I'm off there, because it will. But I mean, it's interesting to me that when you think of, because again, it is attributed to Apollo being a solar deity,
Right.
but she's the one who was turned into it, and she's ripe with seeds, right? And as women are born with X number of eggs already within the ovaries.
Oh,
Does that make
yeah.
sense? And
Yeah.
so it's very much like the solar side of things. The masculine, the male has to release those seeds,
Right.
which I thought was pretty interesting too.
Okay, I never thought about that as an analogy specifically. That's actually brilliant. I love it.
So that's what I was like, this is
Mm,
kind of like all coming together. Yes. I mean,
right.
because if you think about it, there are flowers that have their seeds present, but none quite like the sunflower that I'm
Oh,
aware
yeah.
of.
It's
I mean, I'm
epic.
sure there are, but that's one that we all recognize as, oh, those are seeds. So
And they can produce, a single one can produce up to 2,000 seeds, by the way.
my
So,
mom used to grow them when I was a kid.
oh,
They
really?
get like 6, 7 feet tall. Like
Oh,
they were
yeah.
huge in our backyard. Yeah, we were in a neighborhood and I grew up with chickens. I grew up with the things you weren't supposed to have in a neighborhood. And then we moved
Right.
further out. Yeah. But yeah, we actually roasted sunflower seed heads and all of
Love
that.
that.
Ate it. They were wonderful.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
So outside of Flighty, there was something that I'm not quite familiar with, but you might be. So it said that the sunflower was the emblem of Daphne, who is the daughter of the river god. I don't know how to pronounce this. Panis, and it was beloved by Apollo,
I
who
don't
was
know
beloved
this
by
one.
Apollo. Yeah,
That's
I didn't
interesting. I don't
either.
know this one. No, I don't know
So
it.
that's one I want to go at some point. We're going to have to dig down. This is
Yeah,
probably one of those where we're going to end up having a second episode because it was
sure.
just very interesting. I'd like to find something on that. I actually pulled out some Greek books that I have. Well, they're mythology books that have Greek
Right.
myths in them. And I couldn't really find too much, which I thought was interesting. So that's one that I definitely want to go down another rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Now, do you have anything else on like mythology wise? Because those were the really big ones that I knew of or came across.
Mainly just on the Inca sun god
Yeah,
Inti, if I'm
yeah,
saying that right.
you are
Um,
into.
yeah, so for the Incas, the sunflower was very, very special and sacred as well, because they considered it the literal embodiment of their sun god Inti. And I guess because just to back up for a minute, sunflowers are native to the Americas. So they now are all over the world because they have been spread and brought to different parts of the world, but they originally are really only native to the Americas. Um, so there was the an explorer, Francisco Pizarro, in 1532, came to Peru as an explorer, and they had just discovered these giant sunflowers that were held in such high sacred esteem by the Incas. They would wear sunflower like discs made of gold on their breasts to honor Inti. That was the Incan priestesses. They would wear necklaces of sunflowers. They were adorned in all kinds of way in sacred ritual with sunflowers. So it was a very sacred, special flower for them.
And that seems to be how it was with Mithra as well in Persia, with when it came to the sunflowers. What I thought was interesting was that so I have we've got Francis
Oh,
visiting us.
Francis,
Francis, you have to go,
the
son.
kitty.
Um, what I did find interesting is when I started looking into, now I didn't find that they were from the Americas. I didn't actually find origin. What I found is that they were the first plant. They are known to be the first plant domesticated in the Americas. So that was the
Okay.
first thing that was being grown.
Hmm.
Now with that, they were talking about, and this is where it gets really cool, is that when you look at Native American, so First Nation people of North America,
Right.
when you look at any of their clothing adornment, you look at their jewelry, you look at any artwork, you look at anything, that it was the sunflower is what they used to create the pigment, the bright yellow pigment. And it was not just because they could derive a pigment from it, but because the plant was so sacred to them,
Right.
that when you infused it in anything, it was kind of bringing in that solar side. It was, because everything that they do has a meaning to it. It's not just
Right.
something to consume. And so I was looking at then I went down this rabbit hole, of course, because I'm like, okay, well, how all do they use it? Because I'm just that type of person that wants to know, like, when you know that First Nation people, they don't waste things,
Right.
and they don't just consume things to consume things. I was interested, like, how all are they using sunflower besides pigment? Like, why was that so sacred besides the solar side? And it was
Mhm.
talking about not only did they eat the seeds, but for the vast majority of First Nations, and I'll say First Nations because I think that's the term that we're using now, they talked about they were growing sunflowers because they were using the stalks. That's what they were building their not so we typically when you think of teepees or structured canvas, but they were also building buildings out of the stalks.
Oh,
That's how
wow.
they were building the ropes on a lot of them. That
Right.
it was because of their strong fibers that they were able to build all of these different things. Now, interestingly, there is a mammoth sunflower, which is the largest breed of sunflower, which is in Russia.
Mhm.
And they use those as well because of the strong fibers. The actual stalks are used to, it's literally like a source of almost like you were talking about from a symbolic side, it's strength, it's
Yes.
endurance, it's
Yes.
something that can withstand the test of time and
Mhm.
withstand pressure. And so I thought that was really interesting. And then, of course, the traditional, they've got the medicinal side. Um, this was really cool. Sunflower cakes. Did you see anything on those?
No, but I found rolled sunflower balls
Interesting.
used by the First Nations,
For what? What are they using for?
by warriors when they were going into battle.
Yes.
So
Yes. So
because
sun
sunflower seeds are high in iron, and so actually they're very nutritious too. And so they
yes.
had these little easily, travelable little sunflower rolled balls they would eat to give
Yes.
them
So
strength in battle.
they would have ceremonial sunflower cakes to provide courage to the warriors before battle.
I love
So
that.
that's interesting.
They're
That to
also
me,
very Oh, sorry, go ahead.
what was gonna think? I mean, you think about when we talk about like Apollo, right?
Hmm.
You're talking about that solar deity that rides the chariot through the sky. Now, Native Americans did not use chariots, but again, when we think of, for most of us, warriors going into the battle, we think of chariots and riding out. And so it's very interesting that even though they're different context in terms of details, um, it's still in the same way. It's warriors, it's that solar, that courage, that
Right.
resilience. It's very interesting to me. Anyways, I find it fascinating.
No, I think it's fascinating too. The sunflowers are also linked to the sun dance for many of the tribes. Are you
I mean, it
familiar with the
makes
sun
sense.
dance?
Yeah, I know the Sundance. I
Yep.
mean, it makes sense. Yeah.
And then that goes back to the strength and endurance because for anybody who doesn't know what the sun dance is, it was usually an annual ritual that many different tribes ended up taking this on, especially in the Great Plains area. I guess it became very popular, usually annually, and it was before they do these massive bison hunts. And they wanted to be blessed with abundance, obviously, so that they could be nourished and taken care of. So they would do this dance in honor of the sun, and there would be several of the strongest members of the tribe that would hook these. What was the actual thing they were hooking under their chest skin? It was under the muscle and the skin of their chest, and it would be attached to a pole, and they would basically dance around pulling, and until the skin either ripped away, but they basically were it was like a self torture almost,
Yeah.
but it was to show they were doing it first to hopefully get a vision, because if they were kind of not had enough pain and enough length of time of doing this, and they would be given a vision hopefully, but also it was to kind of almost that sacrifice of showing what they were willing to do for the abundance of their tribe, so that they would be nourished and blessed by as a tribe.
We went to, I don't know where we were as a kid. We actually saw one. They were doing a Sundance, and I was probably like 9 or 10. It was one of our cross country trips my mom had us on. And it was really cool to see. We didn't see that part, but it was part of the
Right.
Sundance that was supposed to be, and they were talking about warriors and they explained stuff. And I just remember being as a kid thinking, like, this is the most amazing thing I have ever seen in my
Yeah.
entire life. Because,
Yeah.
because of course, they're in complete, all of the garb that they wear, their traditional wear, and it was amazing. So
Right.
anybody who hasn't seen it, we can make sure to I'm sure we can find a video on that that's
Oh
open.
yeah. Yeah.
It's open source information that's available. That would be really cool.
We'll definitely find one.
Now, what I do think, so did you have anything on the mammoth
I
sunflowers in Russia?
I do have a little bit about Russia, just as far as how they
Well,
kind of
that's
got there.
yeah, that's what I was going to segue into. So go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, basically, so it was Peter the Great that became very fond of sunflowers and brought them kind of over to Russia. Because again, I don't believe they were natively growing over
Native
there.
to, yeah.
But now they're very abundant over there. So he's the one that basically the figure that brought them over and kind of saw the beauty in them. They really, in Russia, it's really an interesting how they've kind of evolved because they're sunflower seeds as a snack have been beloved in Russia for as they are across the world, but
The
definitely
world, yeah.
for many, many hundreds of years, that's been a big staple of Russian food. But also, the Ukraine has kind of adopted it as their national symbol, and we all know that the Ukraine is really kind of going through some rough times with Russia right now. And the sunflower has almost made a resurgence as an emblem for them to really for their what am I trying to say? Their oh gosh,
Perseverance and consistency through this bull
yes,
crap.
their endurance through all this as a nation and their
Yes.
identity of strength. And even over here in the States, I've seen people with flags and emblems and posters with the Ukrainian sunflower on it. So it's
Yep.
kind of that solidarity and trying to keep themselves alive as a nation and remember who they are and their power and their strength. So I think God, it gives me chills talking about because to me it's a really beautiful use of that symbol in modern times.
Well, and that's what I found interesting about it too. So when I was looking at the Russian mammoth sunflowers, and you think of Russia, and I'm not trying to get into politics here because we just don't do that on the show. But it's interesting when you think of the way that people are, and I'm going to say the way people are viewing this situation. It's like Russia has invaded Ukraine; they're bulldozing their way in, and
Mm-hmm.
so when you think of the Russian sunflowers apparently being the largest, they're considered the mammoths. So it's encroaching upon the Ukrainian sunflower, which again, as you said, is identified as the national flower. Now,
Right.
in Russia, what is amazing to me is that the sunflower for them means peace and optimism.
Right.
And they're invading, going after, attacking, whatever term you feel appropriate to use, um, this country that has the sunflower as their national flower, and they are requesting peace, or
Right.
they are, do you know what I'm saying? They just want peace for themselves, what have you. So it's very interesting where you have the symbolic meaning that's attributed, and then you have the reality of two nations where one is the national flower of the sunflower, one of it means this, but then they're almost being bulldozed,
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
means supposedly peace and optimism. So I just thought that was very interesting within the context of what's going on currently in our world.
There's also
Not not Apollo, not Incas, not
sure
Persians. Like we're stepping
modern.
into the modern interpretation of what does this actually look like
Right.
for our real world right now.
Absolutely. There's also I'm hoping I can get the video to share, but there's a video that went viral in February of 2022. And I have kind of the transcript from it, but it's basically a Ukrainian woman who's challenging a Russian soldier. And have you seen this? It's
Yes, I
it's
have.
it's really
Yes.
empowering. Do you mind if I read
Yeah.
kind of the
No, 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 no. Read it.
this is the translated transcript of what she says to them. And this is a real event. She basically, there's a Russian soldier. She goes up to him and she says, so I guess we're not trying to cuss on here, so I'll just kind of gloss over that. But she said, so what the F are you doing here? And the soldiers kind of just dismisses her. And she says, you are occupants. You are fascists. What the F are you doing on our land with all these guns? And she said, take these seeds, and they're sunflower seeds, and put them in your pockets. So at least sunflowers will grow when you all lie down and die here. And
Yeah.
I just, to me, it's really gives me chills because she's just an older woman. She's not
Yeah.
anybody of any of particular power. And
Power.
here she is standing her ground and drawing up her strength and,
Yeah.
and making this statement. It gave me chills.
Yeah, that's one video have you actually seen the video or do you just have the transcript?
Yes, I've seen the video. So I'm hoping, I just want to make sure it's okay to share it. And, as far as that kind of stuff
I mean,
goes,
you
but
should be able to, as
if
long
it
I
went
think as
viral,
long
I
as
would
you give
imagine it's
credit.
everywhere.
Yeah. I think as long as you give credit to who the original poster is, I think you
Sure.
should be fine. Um, so it's interesting. Do you have anything else on Russia? Because I'm gonna segue into something else.
I don't.
So what I found, so you've got this peace and optimism, you've got what's going on with Ukraine and these different things. But if we take a step back, I think about what Ukraine is going through, right? Whether or not you agree with Ukraine's invasion or not. Again, we're not picking political sides here. We're just talking about the situation as it stands. You're looking at the perseverance and the endurance of the Ukrainian people and the way that the sunflower is for them. In China, the sunflower is known to be a food of immortality. It's
Ooh.
something that feeds the soul for the long term. And so when I was thinking about, it's kind of interesting the way that, because I do know the video, and the way that you see the sunflower and how important that symbol is, and you think about, it's almost like the way you were talking about, like this is the Ukrainian identity. It's
Right.
their reminder of who you are. And it goes back to that immortality. It's a reminder of, despite what happens to the physical, despite what's happening here, there is a truth. There is an
Mhm.
immortal side of the self, of the soul, and of a nation. And so I found that very cool, the way that it's, the seeds are a food of immortality. And it's very
Right.
much what the Ukrainian people are experiencing. So, and it's a completely, I don't want to say completely opposite side of the world, because that's not true, but it is different areas of the world.
Right. That's
So
fascinating.
I thought
Love
that,
that.
yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else before I jump into some, I guess it wouldn't technically be modern stuff. Do you have any science stuff?
I have a little bit of science and I have a little
Oh,
bit
of
of
course you
art.
do. I have art. That's where I'm going. That's
Oh,
my
good.
woo!
Do
Let's
you
talk
want
art, but let's no talk science first,
science
because I
first?
know
Okay.
that's, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
This one I found so just freaking fascinating. So sunflowers are really good at pulling heavy metals and toxic elements from the soil. So much so that they were used after the Chernobyl incident to basically try to clean up the earth. They more than almost any other plant, they just literally draw out all these heavy metals and things from the soil that are damaging the earth, toxic elements. I think that's just a great analogy for being able to almost like looking at a sunflower and remembering, not just in a Pollyanna way to think positive, but to remember to look to the positive and have a little bit of a transmutational effect on these toxic people near you. Because we've all got some of these people in our life that are, let's just admit it, are toxic people. And so it's almost like, your ability to
Perhaps.
basically like clean up the toxins around you and let things still grow and be healthy. So I don't know. I think that's a
I
great
actually really like that. Yeah,
analogy. So, but that one
I
kind
do. I
of blew
really
my
like
mind. I thought
that.
that was really cool. Um,
Well, there's one thing that I just thought about that kind of has to deal with that before we jump into art.
yeah.
So, do you remember? I knew her from Instagram is how I met her. But then, do you remember Allison Sasso from Tide, the
Oh yeah.
redhead that
We
sat
still
with
talk.
us?
We do Zooms
Yes.
regular.
Okay.
We're
So
good
so
friends.
Allison, yes. So I was thinking, because you were talking about pulling out the toxins and stuff like that, and then the land, which my squirrel brain went boop boop boop. Allison, with her red hair, first of all, reminds me very sunflower lioness energy, which I adore her. I knew immediately when I saw her, I
Yes.
like her.
She's good. I
I
love
picked
her.
her as a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's from Kansas, and the state flower of Kansas is the sunflower. So
Right.
that very much, just for some reason, you were talking. She and I had recently had a conversation about toxicity and the metaphysical and spiritual community, even the tarot
What? There's
community.
toxicity in that
Yes, I
community?
know.
Girl.
Wow. We were recently talking about that, and and withstanding it and persevering above it and not
Uh-huh.
coming down to the same level as those types of people. And so as soon as you started talking about Chernobyl and cleaning up the land and stuff like that, and I thought, immediately went to Allison and certain things that she's experiencing in that conversation that we had, and that she's got very not just being a sunflower in the present moment and rising above, but also she is a sunflower.
Yeah,
I
she's
adore her.
radiant. Yeah.
Yeah, she's good people. If you are, whether you're a tarot reader or not, oracle reader, she actually specializes in ruins, and she knows her
Yes.
stuff.
She does know
Um,
her stuff.
yeah, she
I know
does.
she's doing some classes too, and she's
Yes,
locally in Kansas.
she's very educated about her topic.
Yes.
Um, and she's a teacher, which is wonderful when you have a teacher who knows how to actually teach. Anyways, you can find her at Veil, Veil, and Vow, Vow, Tarot, Veil and Vow Tarot. So that's our personal sunflower for today. But my brain went off into Kansas and then thinking about her. So this could be a story of persevering, whether you have toxic sludge from a nuclear meltdown, or you just have toxic people in your
Yep.
environment, life, community, whatever, to rise above and persevere. Okay, that's all I will limit myself on said topic.
On said topic, girl.
On said topic. Okay, so let's talk about art, because I
Yes,
know that's where we both want to talk. All right, so
definitely.
what you got?
Well, mainly I just went straight to Van Gogh because Van Gogh
Yes,
is no, you probably got that too, but I love Van Gogh. I just
yes.
love it. Um, Most people are very familiar. If you, even as we're describing it, even those listening on the podcast can almost probably bring to mind exactly some of the paintings we're talking about because they're so prevalent in our, in our collective eye. But he did multiple paintings of sunflowers, and he did a total of 5 that were only done with 3 shades of yellow and nothing else. I thought that was fascinating.
Just
From an art
incredible.
perspective,
Yeah.
that is a challenge. And the fact that he did them so brilliantly and beautifully, that's fascinating to me as a challenge as an artist. Also, I thought this was really beautiful. He actually, in his own writings, they had a special significance for him. He said that they represented for him gratitude. And I thought that was really beautiful. I mean, we all know that Van Gogh had a lot of mental health struggles, and his work is so beautiful and so profound. And he, to me, represents being able to try to find the light and find something to be, to hold on to, like gratitude as a property when you're really down in the dark and in the funk. So I just,
So,
that just lights my heart up. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful reminder. We all need to do that when we're feeling really down in the dirt.
so here's something interesting. This was that thing beforehand. I was like, oh, I can't wait to tell you. My grandmother, the one that
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about, her brother had an original Van Gogh in his living room.
What?
Yeah. I mean,
Jealous.
he's he's like a mate. Well, he's passed now, but he
Yeah.
still has a huge fund. He went to Harvard, so he has a huge fund, scholarship fund that goes to the Harvard school, law school. Anyways, needless to say, he could afford an original Van Gogh. But I remember being as a kid, like just staring at this thing, and it wasn't one that had sunflowers on. I don't remember what it was, but it was like really dark and freaked me out as a kid. And I was like, this is just weird. He also had a mummy in his living room.
What?
It was a mummy that was like sitting and wrapped, and it was an interesting house to have Christmas in. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, their Christmas tree
Your
was
Christmas
like
tree.
was literally like 20 feet tall that they had imported. Like it was a trip. Wonderful people. Never knew they if you had met them on the street, you would never know that they had money, because
Yeah.
that just wasn't the way that they presented themselves. But like I said, I have to find some pictures in this house and see if I can find a picture of this Van Gogh. But I remember just thinking to myself, once, of course, when you're a kid, you don't know. But like the older you got, and as I studied art, I'm like, Uncle Richard had an original Van
Yeah.
Gogh in his living room.
That's
Like,
wild.
that's a trip. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a mummy. I mean, the mummy freaked you out. You knew that wasn't normal, but yeah, I think that's probably less significant. It wasn't an
Right.
Egyptian mummy. It was like somewhere else in the world. Well, it could have been Egyptian, but I don't think it was. The way that it was
It wasn't like in a
preserved.
case or anything. It was just hanging
It was
out.
in a glass case. Yeah, it
Oh,
was like in
okay.
a glass. It had a glass case, but it was sitting and wrapped,
I'm
and it was
picturing it just
very
like propped on the couch, like hanging out,
no,
being like putting Santa
no. It
hats
was
on it.
no, it was sitting, and it had a glass thing over,
Yeah.
like a glass cube over it, but it was sitting and wrapped, and it was all dark brown and freaky, and I
Wild.
mean, yeah, Yeah. So, for any of y'all interested, his name is Richard Caldwell. And he was I think he was an attorney for the United States, something like that. He dealt with like big time law. Anyways, yeah, he had a Van Gogh and a mummy in his living room, which freaked me out as a kid. So now I do want to talk about, so I can never say his name right. And you might know who I'm talking about. Paul Gauguin. He was an impressionistic, he was actually post-impressionistic artist. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, can you spell his name for me?
Ga Gauguin. It's Gauguin, but I can never
Gauguin.
say, yeah, I
Gauguin.
can never Gauguin. I can never say it. His artwork on sunflowers, I actually prefer to Van Gogh's. I know
Uh-huh.
that's probably like
That's
taboo to
okay. You
say.
can have an opinion. It's okay.
I know, I know. I'm not, I mean, I'm not a huge impressionist, post-impressionist artist. I don't want to say groupie, but I mean, we all have our time periods that we love, and that's
Sure.
not one that I'm huge on, but I do like his work quite a bit. Now, do you know, trivia, which monarch is depicted with sunflowers?
Oh no.
They chose the sunflower as their personal symbol. Dun, 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 dun,
I
dun, dun,
I
dun.
don't know. And I have like a guess that came to my head, but I feel like it's just based on nothing.
Who do you think it is? Who's your guess?
It's not gonna be right. I feel like it's gonna be Queen Victoria.
No,
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
not
no.
even right. No.
You're like, no, don't shame
No.
me for it.
Oh, no. Okay. So we do have to talk about the sunflower is associated with royalty. So
Okay.
it is children. That is a big one that's attributed to. And if you're a tarot reader, you know that in the sun card of the RWS, the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck, the
Mm-hmm.
child is depicted with sunflowers. It is attributed to children. However, it is attributed to royalty, and it starts with King Louis XIV of France.
Okay,
He
I feel like I
chose,
do know this because
you
he was
do.
obsessed with the sun
Yes,
and like
he was
all things
obsessed.
sun. Yes.
Yes, there were stories that he thought he was the sun god reincarnated, that he
Yes.
chose the sun as his personal emblem, then the sunflower is his personal emblem. He was obsessed with gold, and the gold, like not just
Right.
gold, the metal, but literally gold as in, everything sun, golden,
Yeah.
alchemy, all of those things. So yes, that is where, and it's interesting to think of, because when you look at him and you look at the artwork, actually, if you look at all of the artwork back then, whether or not it's him or not, sunflowers are depicted in a ton of art, like
Right.
a ton, especially coming out of France, anything that had to do with him, but also with children. And so if you think about the sun card and the little baby that's naked
Hmm.
on the back of the white horse, I mean, is that baby Louis XIV of France? Like, so
Huh.
again, it's something to consider, to chew on a bit,
Yeah.
one might say. But
Interesting.
yeah, that's why he was obsessed with, or chose the sunflowers, was the obsession with the sun and with
Right.
this solar energy. And, like I said, the myths and legends of his belief that he was the reincarnated solar god.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I'd never heard that about the sunflower, but I knew he was sun everything, so that makes
Mhm.
100% sense.
Yeah, now I'm interested to know what Queen Victoria's flower would be.
I don't even know why she came to my mind because that's why I'm like, I don't
Probably, I
know
mean,
what this guess is based on. Nothing.
probably. Well, no, because if you think about it, the sunflowers are really prevalent in the Queen of Wands. So,
Yes.
I mean, I could see
Yes.
where you could get that from. Do you know
Right.
what I'm saying?
As far as
And like I
queen
said,
energy. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And there's tons of, like I said, there's tons of artwork of monarchs being depicted with sunflowers. So it's not just him. He's just the one that chose it as his personal emblem. But
Right.
you could find tons of art that includes sunflowers with, female and male, young to old, like all of it, because it deals with royalty, which is interesting. It's interesting to me because it goes back to that solar thing, right? It goes back to
Right.
that solar energy. And then, for our listeners who don't know this, maybe you haven't heard a past episode, we are not endorsing any particular religious or belief system, but we talk about many different ones on here. And when you think about, Jesus was depicted as the son of God. Um, and so it kind of goes into that, what it was the thinking behind Louis the 14th, thinking that he was a reincarnated sun or solar deity, the one that was going to lead the people. It's very
Right.
interesting
That is
because
interesting.
all of those martyred solar deities sit on the tree of life in the sun, Tiferet. So it's very interesting.
Yeah,
Very
definitely.
interesting. And I just realized I'm using an orange pen.
Very interesting.
I know. This is
Hmm.
very interesting. Usually I have green. That's my color, my jam, man.
Right.
All right, Jen. I do not have anything else. Do you have anything else?
I don't. I think that that really hits on the big points about it.
So if you walk outside, or one of our listeners walks outside and they see a sunflower that has popped up in their front yard, like what has happened to you in your backyard, or they're driving down the street and see a billboard with a sunflower on it, or they're in the middle of the grocery store and somebody's covered head to toe in sunflower, garb. What are some things that they might think about? What are some things that the universe might be sending to them as a message?
Remember your own strength. Remember to be confident in all that you do. Remember to stand in your authority and your personal power. I mean, I feel like it's literally saying you have every right to be confident and carry yourself with confidence and with strength and power. To me, that's like the overwhelming message. It's like that boost. It's like the world trying to give you a confidence boost.
And Brandy's opinion, I think you should also consider visualizing taking the stalk, because remember we're talking about the hardy stalk. You
Yes.
can like break it down, weave it, and create a bullwhip and take control with that bullwhip. Just
Yeah,
saying, just saying. I might have owned a bullwhip or two on my day. That's all.
girl.
Um, so it's Texas, y'all. So
Woo.
I mean, those are things to consider in the way it shows up. And I think it's also important to consider, not just the way you were talking about at the beginning, like the way that they don't just follow the sun through the sky, but also they fixate on the east. The older that they get, the more mature
Right.
that they are in the situation. So it can also be kind of a progression. If you're seeing a series of sunflowers, what does that look like? What does that series look like? Does it look like that sunflower is progressing? Like, was it a bud and now it's growing? And then when you get to a fully mature stage, like, so if you were to see a fully mature sunflower, that could be quite different than coming across a sunflower bud.
That's
Or
true.
have you gotten fully roasted seeds? That would be completely different than, again, just a little bitty baby sprouting up out of the ground. So
Right.
take into consideration, where's the growth process? And that sunflower, are you getting the beginning stages? Are you getting the end?
Definitely.
And then, where do you go from there? So with that being said, we want to thank you for joining us on Keeping It Simple, episode 7, the sunflower. If you want to do us a big favor, we'd really appreciate it if you hit that like, follow, even if you left us a little doot, 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 we love your show, or doot, doot, doot. Please, God, pick a different topic. Whatever it is, we would love your feedback.
We welcome
We're
feedback.
we do. We welcome feedback, and we would love your honest reviews, your input, anything like that. We hope you
Definitely.
guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.